such a pleasure to be amongst all such wonderful, talented, gorgeous women. I'm here to talk to you about the fact that despite diversity no longer being seen as a CSR initiative, oh, that one lady, let us recruit her in administration and now we've done our diversity agenda. Despite diversity no longer being seen as a CSR initiative, despite the fact that diversity has been paying its way for several years now, the fact is that it will take 108 years before we have gender parity at the current pace of change. 108 years, ladies, before women work as much as men, before women earn as much as men, and before women are treated on par with men. Why is this happening? Let's look at a few facts first. So, it is said that the world's GDP will improve by $28 trillion if women work to their full potential. India's GDP will show an upswing of 17% if there is gender parity. In organizations, if there are 30% women at the leadership level, there is a 6% upswing on profitability. And we all know the advantages of a double income on health, on lifestyle, on education, and various other parameters if both men and women work. So why is it that despite these numbers in front of us, the diversity triad hasn't changed too much? The ratios have largely remained the same for the last 30 years despite diversity being seen to be such a force multiplier. So there are 30% women who enter at the base of the pyramid at the entry level. That drops by half to 15%. And then that drops by a further 2/3 to just being 5% women at the top. So there are only 5% or even less than 5% women CEOs, women managing partners, women venture capital heads, women directors in organizations across the world. And this ratio, unfortunately, has not changed too much. 30%, 15%, 5%. We all agitate about that 5% at the top, and we've tried to put in reservations for women directors at the political level, etc., and we try to correct the imbalance at the top. But it's not about the glass ceiling. It's actually about the leaky pipeline. When 30% women who enter, in the first decade of their career, half of them stop working. And then from that small talent pool, 2/3 either remain there or drop off. Now, issues facing the base of the pyramid, I think we've discussed and hotly debated and also tried to find solutions as organizations. So the issues that women face in that first decade of their career: marriage, childbirth, the guilt of leaving a crying child at home and coming to work, the lack of support around her, the unwillingness on her part to ask for support. Oh, my mother-in-law will bring up my child. So badly she's brought up my husband. I'm not going to allow her to do that. So I think we've discussed all these issues several times, right? But today in this forum, I don't want to talk about what's happening there. I want to talk to you about the even more significant drop that is happening, which is when senior women such as you reach, after a lot of hard work and determination and of course the talent you have, you reach that senior management roles where you are vice presidents and partners and CXOs, but something happens there where 2/3 of you don't move beyond that ladder. Now one would assume that women such as yourself are smart, are successful, are confident, obviously are talented, obviously understand have the determination and have done the hard work to reach this position. You've learned how to navigate that delicate balance between home and work. Then what is happening That's confident, smart, successful women who've reached CXO level are staying there. Why are we not seeing 15% women CEOs even now? Why aren't we seeing 15% women directors and 15% managing partners and VC heads? And that's what I want to focus on today. And according to me, there are some self-limiting behaviors that we ourselves have put around ourselves. Some barriers that we have created around ourselves which is preventing us from reaching the top despite all that talent that we have. And that's the conversation I want to have with you right now. So what are these barriers? What are these self-restricting behaviors women exhibit? The first one. Unfortunately, women have this bad habit of minimizing themselves, of being lesser than what they are, of being more invisible, more colorless, quieter than they need to be. I think it stems to a large extent from a lack of confidence. So there's this whole veneer of confidence that I see around senior women, but inside their heart they're suffering from the imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm not good enough to be here. I was just lucky to get here. And that sort of lack of confidence makes them far more tentative, far more timorous than they need to be. You all know the study which talks about the fact that when equally competent men and women were asked this question at the middle management level, that how many of you think you will reach the top? They were equally talented, equally skilled, equally competent. The organization had given them the same feedback that you are our staff performers. When they asked men and women, how many of you will reach the top? 83% of the men said they'll reach the top. Only 69% of the women thought they'll reach the top. Look at the gap. I mean, I look at people around me, I see men who enter my organizations and the moment they're confirmed from management trainee, they think they should become CEO tomorrow itself. Yeah? Whereas the women, skilled and talented CXOs, I have to push them that you are ready to become CEO. Why? And no, ma'am, I'm not ready. No, I have these issues. I still have to work on this. I don't understand finance as well. So they're constantly looking at the weaknesses. A woman comes out of a presentation and she first starts talking of the 3 things that she did wrong. A man comes out of the presentation, oh, I made the best presentation ever. I've got women entrepreneur friends who have developed fantastic platforms and apps and they're not ready to launch it because they're still tinkering around with what is wrong. Whereas the men with a half-baked product are out there. I've seen women entrepreneurs at fundraising meetings. When they present their platform or their product, they're first outlining the 3 things that are not right with it. I remember when I was very young, 15, 16, and I had gone for a family wedding and I'd got a sty in my eye. And every time I would look in the mirror, that sty would be, I thought the sty was as big as my face. And I was agitating over it. And I was just 15, 16. I'm saying, my God, I'm going for this wedding. No boy will look at me. Look at that sty. It's so huge, etc. And I think teenagers go through that when they're seeing only that sty is larger than the face. But I have beautiful eyes. Why was I looking only at that one little boil? But I think women, when they, despite the fact that they've grown up, the sty is always larger than the face. They're always looking at what's not good about them. And this results therefore in, not celebrating their achievements, not talking about what they've done well. So I go to a male CEO, one of my male CEOs, and let's assume the year's gone well and tell him, so Rahul, tell me, you've done very well this year. What were the reasons? Oh, ma'am, I thought of this great idea and this great strategy, and then I told my team, align yourself behind me, and then when I told my clients, guys, I've got the most brilliant thing ever, and it'll sort all your problems, and the client was so taken up with what I said, and he said, yes, go ahead and do it. And equally, when I go to a woman CEO who's done equally, if not better, and I say, so, Meera, you've done very well this year. What are the reasons? Ma'am, I'd like to thank God, and I'd like to thank my team, and you've been so supportive, and my dog was also very nice, and I think I've just been very lucky. She just doesn't say that it happened because of me. I did this project well because of me. It's always. So if we don't celebrate our successes, if we don't talk about it, our bosses forget. While those 70% of men who are working with you are always saying, I'm so great, I'm so great, I'm so great. And I think this also happens because, I mean, look at what our backgrounds are. I mean, look at our historical ways that we've been brought up. I mean, men were always hunters, right? So the caveman went out to hunt, and because he had to hunt a prey, he had to be larger than the prey. So he red feathers and red paint and blah, 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 because he has to be seen to be larger than the prey because he's a hunter. While women were staying in the cave, right? And in the cave they were collaborating and they were playing nice. And if I say, I'm so great, you'll throw me out of the cave. So I have to say, so nice you are, such so pretty you're looking. And you'll say, yeah, so pretty you're also looking, oh, so nice. So we had to play nice. And we are continuing to play that role. And that doesn't work when you have become hunters. You have to change your mood of behavior. And we have to bring up our daughters differently. So how do we bring up our daughters? We bring them up to minimize themselves, right? Don't talk loudly, don't wear red lipstick, don't wear short clothes, don't show your teeth while you're laughing. We teach them to be invisible because we are wanting to protect them. But in this bid to protect them, we are actually bonsaiing them. So how will a girl who's been brought up to be lesser than what she is, to always be criticized, to be more invisible, how will that little girl grow up to be a woman who says, I deserve this salary, I deserve this promotion, I deserve it because I'm good? And I think that has to change. Second point I want to make to you is this whole fact women have, or this whole desire women have of feeling needed or wanted. They're very thrilled when they're liked, needed, wanted and appreciated. And they'll settle in an organization or settle in a team where they get all this. And sometimes that cocoon that they create around themselves, that cocoon might be a cocoon that will stagnate them. But they'd rather have that than have growth. So again, if I talk to a woman manager and she's done something well, and I say, well done, Sangeeta, she'll go home and she'll be very thrilled because she's been appreciated, right? She'll go home and I know she'll tell her husband and her whole weekend will go well because Apurva appreciated her. I say the same to a male manager. So then he looks at me, okay, what next? Just because I've done this well, what happens now? Do I get a promotion? Do I get a bonus? Do I get an incentive? Do I get an increment? So a man is looking for reward, a woman is looking for appreciation. And sometimes the trade-off that is made between appreciation and reward actually ends up ensuring that the woman doesn't move up because she's happy to be there. There are these best boss mugs behind her. There are these appreciation letters she's getting from her team. Why would she let that go? But what she doesn't realize that this is hampering her growth. And I don't want to be morbid here, but the fact is, where does this feeling stem from? What we think of the girl child. So from an unwanted female fetus to an unwanted girl child to a teenage girl who's more a burden. Let's get her married off quickly. You know, she's paraya dhan. This is the feedback she's received all her life. So naturally when she grows up, wherever she finds appreciation, wherever she finds that she is mission critical, she's happy to stay there. That's reward enough for her. I think this we must understand that this is the socialization we've had, our daughters have had, our women colleagues have had. And this is what we need to change. Nobody else will change it for us. Finally, the last point I want to make to you is the stereotyping that was mentioned in the questions too and by Siddharth. So the world will stereotype us always. It is said that there are 11 million pieces of information that our mind is bombarded with at any point in time. And obviously we can't make sense of 11 million pieces of information. So we create patterns to simplify this data overload and to make sense of it. And stereotypes are yet another pattern. So the world constantly will stereotype us. But the point I want to make to you today is that the world will continue to stereotype us. But are we not also playing to the stereotypes? So I remember many years ago when I got onto my first board. It was a very marquee board and I was very excited because, you know, it's a big tick mark to get onto a good board. So I go for this meeting and there are all these 85-year-old men around, and I'm very thrilled to be there on the board, and they're very welcoming and say, oh, please come and sit, and they listen to me and they open doors for me and give me coffee. And then one of them turns around and says there, you know, we're so glad to have you on the board, Apurva. You've increased the glamour quotient of the board. Glamour quotient? I was so horrified. I said, well, glamour, then you should have got somebody whose job it is to be glamorous, no? A model or an actress. Why me? And to counter that, because I was so offended with being called the glamour quotient, to counter that, I started wearing brown saris and tying my head in a bun and wearing this big bindi and wearing specs and trying to look very intellectual and very maternal, and I became very motherly. So I then became the mother of the board. I was nurturing the CEO and patting the other directors on the back and saying, never mind, next quarter will be better, next quarter will be better. So they tried to stereotype me into this glamour quotient mold. I walked out from that box to walk into another box of that being the mother of the board. And then I was forever playing that role. In 1983, a Harvard business professor, Professor Cantor, did a research on stereotyping, and she came out with this, that there are 4 stereotypes the world typically boxes women in. The mother, the Iron Maiden, Angela Merkel and Margaret Thatcher, the seductress, oh, she must have reached the top because she's so charming, she must have charmed her way to the top, and the pet, the little cute girl who's part of a gang, and the price she's paying for being part of the gang is being that sweet, nice girl who everybody makes fun of, nobody takes seriously, but she's part of the gang. So these are the 4 stereotypes. And repeatedly, we are boxed into it, or we box ourselves into it, as I did in my starring role of mother of the board. And I think the moment women allow themselves to be boxed in, to be labeled, they end up being unidimensional, they end up minimizing themselves, they end up being lesser than what they are. And I think that again has to change. The world will not change it for us, we have to prevent these stereotypes. We have to walk out of these boxes because we are far larger than the label that people around us are putting. These are some of the barriers, ladies, that hamper the progress of highly talented and skilled women from reaching the next level. And these are the barriers we must break. The only way we will be able to change this slow pace of growth, the only way we will be able to bring about this change is if we see enough women role models at the top, so that the young women who are working alongside us don't automatically and naturally assume that the default gender of leadership is male. And that we have to change. So the charge I lay upon all of you today is that you must reach the absolute pinnacle of your professional journeys so that the women who are coming after you feel emboldened and inspired to do the same. Thank you so much.